Have you ever heard that term API management and kind of scratched your head wondering what it's all about? Well, you are in exactly the right place. In this explainer, we're going to cut through the jargon and take a first look at API platforms, totally geared for beginners. Let's dive right in.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with a super simple analogy I call the API waiter, then we'll meet the API manager to see why you'd even need one. After that, we'll check out the different tools for the job, zoom in on the real powerhouse option, and wrap it all up with a big strategic question.
All right, first up, the API waiter. Our goal here is to make that acronym API feel incredibly simple. I promise by the end of this bit, it'll make perfect sense.
So, the official textbook definition of an API, an application programming interface, is that it's a messenger. It takes your request, tells another system what to do, and brings back the response. I mean, that's accurate, but a little dry, don't you think? Let's use an analogy that makes it click instantly.
Okay, imagine you're at a restaurant. You are the customer, the kitchen, with all its databases and complex logic, that's the backend system. Now, you don't just walk into the kitchen yourself and start telling the chef what you want, right? No way. You talk to the waiter. That waiter is the API. The waiter takes your order, translates it for the kitchen, and brings your food back to you. It's that simple. The API is just that clean, efficient go-between that lets two different systems talk to each other.
All right, let's move on. So, if an API is just a waiter, why on earth does it need a manager? I mean, if you've just got one waiter and a couple of tables, maybe it doesn't. But what happens when your little restaurant suddenly becomes the hottest spot in town?
Exactly. When your restaurant is packed every single night with lines out the door, you can't just rely on your waiters to handle everything. You need a general manager to orchestrate the whole show. Someone at the front door securing things. Someone watching the flow of orders. Someone handling the money. In the tech world, that general manager, well, that's your API platform. It's that crucial layer of control you need when your APIs go from being a convenience to being critical for business.
So what does this general manager actually do? Well, it really boils down to three core jobs. First, you've got security. Think of this as the bouncer at the door, making sure only the right people get in. Second is monitoring. That's your floor manager, keeping an eye on everything to make sure service is running smoothly. And finally, monetization. That's the cashier, handling all the payments so you can actually make money.
Okay, now that we get why we need a manager, let's talk about picking the right one. Because, a cozy little cafe needs a very different type of manager than a massive 3-story fine dining establishment. It's the same with APIs. Different situations call for different tools.
Think of this slide as your cheat sheet, at least for the Google Cloud world. For that simple cafe, or in our world, serverless backends where you're not managing servers, API Gateway is perfect. It's your low-cost, straightforward manager. Now, for a high-end sushi bar that needs incredibly fast, specialized service, like with high-performance gRPC services, you'd go with Cloud Endpoints. But for that massive, global restaurant chain, you need Apigee. It's the whole shebang. Top-tier security, monetization, deep analytics, everything.
Okay, so for the rest of our time, we're going to focus on that powerhouse, Apigee. We're going to look at some messy, real-world problems that it's built to solve. These are the kinds of situations where you'll be so glad you hired the best general manager in town.
So let's start with a classic developer nightmare. You've got an older, kind of fragile backend system. It works fine with a steady stream of requests, but a sudden flood of traffic, even if it's technically within the daily limit, is enough to knock it over and crash everything. How do you protect it?
The solution here is a feature in Apigee called a spike arrest policy. It's basically a shock absorber for your traffic. It takes those sudden, sharp bursts and smooths them out into a nice, even stream that your backend can actually handle without falling over.
All right, let's switch gears to a business problem. Let's say you have some really valuable data and you want to turn your API into a real product by selling access to it. How do you set up different plans, like a free tier, a silver tier, a gold tier, and manage all the billing and subscribers?
This is where that cashier function we talked about earlier really shines. Apigee has a monetization add-on that's built for exactly this. It lets you create all those different product tiers, it handles the billing integrations, and it manages your subscribers. It's the entire business infrastructure you need to turn your API into a revenue engine.
Okay, next challenge. You've built an amazing API, and now you want other developers and partners to build cool stuff with it. But right now, the process is a nightmare. They have to email you for keys, the documentation is confusing, it's just a huge pain. How do you fix that?
Apigee solves this with its integrated developer portal.
You can think of it like a self-service VIP lounge for your partners. It's a website where they can sign up, get their own API keys instantly, play around with interactive documentation, and even see their own usage stats. It makes your API super attractive and easy to work with.
Now let's talk security. You're getting hammered by these really sophisticated bots. They're scraping your data, and they're smart. They get around your basic limits by constantly switching IP addresses. How in the world do you stop them?
Well, you need a smarter bouncer, right? That's what Apigee's advanced API security is for. It uses machine learning to analyze traffic patterns. It figures out what normal human behavior looks like and can automatically spot the weird, robotic patterns of a bot, and then block them even when they try to change things up.
Okay, here's a huge one, especially if you're in an industry like finance or healthcare. You're facing strict regulations about data residency. The actual data, the API traffic itself, is legally forbidden from leaving your own physical data center. But you still want all the benefits of a modern cloud-managed platform. What do?
Apigee Hybrid has a really clever solution for this. It splits the work. The brains of the operation, where you design your policies and look at analytics, that all runs in the cloud. But the muscle, the part that actually processes the API traffic, gets deployed right inside your own data center. So your sensitive data never leaves your control and you stay compliant.
Okay, let's bring it all home with our final section. We've talked about waiters and managers, simple gateways, and enterprise powerhouses. So what's the big picture here? What does this all mean for you?
This quote right here really just nails the whole idea. Is your API just a simple door that lets people get into your application? If so, a basic manager like API Gateway is probably all you need. But what if the API is the business? What if it's the entire storefront where your customers browse, shop, and pay? Well, then you need the full-featured platform.
So it all comes down to this one final question you should ask yourself. Is your API just a feature of something else you offer, or is the API the product itself? Your answer to that question will tell you everything you need to know about which kind of manager to hire. Thanks so much for joining me today.